Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second Take Action Tuesday. I see that a lot of folks are in the chat welcoming one another and just saying hi and where you're from, which we love to see you do. If you are new to us with Greenpeace, or this is like a new call that you're joining in, we want to make sure that you know how to use the chat. So open up the chat box and introduce yourself, and you can do that with that chat function. Linda put this in the chat for us as well. But if you want to make sure that everyone is seeing your chat, just make sure that it goes to all panelists and attendees. And Andrew, I see you from Chicago. Hi, I'm Liz. I'm in Chicago as well. I am the program training lead at Greenpeace, which just essentially means that I get the wonderful, amazing job of thinking through what skills folks like yourselves need in order to take action with us and join in our training. So grateful to have you here. And also wanted just to say that we're lucky to be joined by two other folks tonight that will be leading on training. First is Vanessa Butterworth, who's going to talk in just a second, and she's Greenpeace's digital strategist. And she is going to drop some knowledge on us tonight about what digital organizing means, and especially how we can do it right now in this strange new world that we are in, with a lot of heartache and a lot of sadness and a lot of moments to take action and an opportunity to make the world look a little bit different. So we are lucky to have her tonight. We are also joined by Adrienne Lowry, who's going to close out our call tonight. She's on the supporter mobilization team, and she's a supporter mobilization team lead. You might have heard from her before. She's incredible and will give us some very specific ways to take action. Two other people that I make sure I don't want to forget, actually three, so sorry. Linda Rodriguez, also on our supporter team. You can see her face. She's wonderful. She's with us tonight helping out the chat box, making sure your questions get answered, which you can use in the chat, or you can also use the Q&A function if you have a question that you want to send directly to us. We also have Sam Gazy. He thinks about a lot of actions that you can take and how it can be strategic. He's with us in the back end as well, making sure this all goes smoothly. And one more person, Cole Taylor, is with us, and he is an incredible organizer joining us tonight on the call on the back end as well. So thank you for joining. We couldn't be more grateful to have you. We have a few goals for tonight as you join us for the second Take Action Tuesday. The first goal that we have is that we want you to know the power of digital organizing and campaigning. It took until this week, actually, for me to understand that those are different things. And Vanessa actually broke that down for me. So she's going to get into that, which is going to be really fun in just a second. We have a specific action that we're going to take tonight, and that's putting pressure on KKR through email and through social media. And if you don't know what KKR is, we're going to break that down for you tonight as well and make sure that you know how to take action strategically with us all together. By the end of this call, we want you to feel connected to Greenpeace volunteers and just that sense of accomplishment that comes from calling, from social media, from emailing, and taking action together. So hopefully all three of these happen by the end of the call tonight. We are going to do a few things just so you know what's coming up. I'm going to do a poll in just a second, and we'll have our opening together. Vanessa is going to lay the framework for why digital and what that means in this world online. And then she's going to break down the difference between digital campaigning, digital organizing, and how to think about that strategically. And then also the content and resources that you have at your fingertips as you take action. Then we're going to physically practice it and put into application what she trains on and take action together to put pressure on KKR. And then Adrienne is going to close us out for the night. So excited to be with you, grateful that you're joining us, because we know there's so many ways that you could be spending your evening, and I feel lucky to come together with you tonight on this call this evening. So with that, I'm going to do one more thing before I pass to Vanessa. We are trying to get a sense of why folks choose to join our calls, especially right now. We know that folks work a long day. You might have family that you're taking care of all throughout the day right now. And so your time is particularly precious. So we want to gauge why you joined this call with us and to make sure that we continue providing what you need in order to continue joining. So the question that you should see on your screen right now, I don't see actually any voting yet, so I'm going to relaunch it. Okay, so the question is, why did you choose to join this call tonight? You might have wanted community with Greenpeace. You might want action to take, you might want to take action and make a meaningful difference. You might have seen the topic on digital organizing. You might, oh, this question got cut off. You want to know what Greenpeace is up to right now. So that's the fourth one. And then if you have another reason, you might say like, Liz, none of those are actually why I joined tonight, and I'm going to put that into the chat. We look at the chat really closely after the call, especially to see why you've joined us. So I see about half of you have voted. I'm going to wait a few more seconds because I'd love to see what our most popular poll answer is. Okay, 61% have voted. So we're at about 2/3. Let's see, interdependence, I see. Great. I see folks putting in the chat why other reasons they joined, and I love reading those as well. So about 2/3 have voted. I have a goal of at least 3/4 of you voting because I really want to get good data from this poll. So take a second and put in your answer. Also, if you're curious, there's about 100 folks on this call tonight. So no, you're with 100 other people about to take action all together. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, show you the results. Looks like across the board, there's different reasons why folks joined, which is exciting. About a fourth wanted community with Greenpeace. 2/3 want to take action and make a meaningful difference. A solid third wanted training on digital organizing, which is exciting because that's our topic. About a fourth wanted to know what Greenpeace is up to right now. And then 12% said they're putting in the chat. So thanks for those results and thoughts. And without further ado, I'm going to pass to Vanessa to lead us in this time. And Vanessa, I'm going to pass to you remote control so you can do the slides if you feel comfortable with that.
Awesome. Hey, everybody.
Okay, Vanessa, let me know if you can't control the slides yet.
Yep, I got it.
Oh, perfect.
And do people see my screen?
Yes.
Perfection. Can you still see me too? Great. I have a guest host, my dog, Gus. He says hi. He just went out for a walk and he's really tired now, hopefully. So hey, everybody. Thanks, Liz, Adrian, Linda, Sam, for organizing this. And thanks for everybody for being on the call. I know this is like a huge topic. And I know that while we're sort of sitting in social isolation right now, when we talk about online, this is sort of an important moment to use every online tool in our toolbox. Okay, so I'm changing the slides. People can see that? Perfect, great. Cool. So as we jump into this, I'm gonna be throwing out different jargony words. And our co-hosts here will help facilitate the chat, and please throw any questions that you have in there, any clarifications, and we'll definitely get to it. And there will be points where I'll stop talking and ask you if you need any more clarity, or maybe you want to share an insight or an idea. But I'm going to be throwing out some jargony words to you. But I want you to remember what's fundamental about organizing online. Is that the online tools are just a way to build power. It's a way to organize more and more people to build power. to make change in the world. So lots of stuff that I'm going to talk about, but in the end, this organizing online is no different from how you organize in person. Um, the only difference is that you can organize with more and more people. You can organize en masse um, online. Um, and we know that people power, when we build our people power up, that's the most solid way that we can create meaningful long-term change. Um, if you look in the history books, that's what happens. It's a bunch of people want something done or want something to change, and that's what makes our change. So here at Greenpeace, that's one of our fundamental strategies on organizing folks and making change in the world, is to build our power and to engage with people like you to support that and help with that and help lead that as well. So I want to go into the difference between, just quickly, the difference between digital organizing and digital campaigning. So digital in general, like I said, gives us the ability to foster offline relationships en masse by leveraging online platforms and tools. At the end of the day, like I said, organizing online is just another way of organizing. You still need to build personal relationships with people. This doesn't let you off the hook in not going through your call list and calling through people and making sure that you're connecting with folks. Because we know that organizing and creating community, creating a sense of solidarity, of working together, is one of the fundamental reasons why people organize together and what motivates them and inspires them. So you don't want to lose that personalized relationship building. It's the key to all of this. And digital organizing, at least for me, is about establishing and maintaining and amplifying a presence online to ask people or to organize people to take action. One of the reasons why I have delved into online organizing in my personal activism and in my work is because I think it's really cool. I think that it's a way to reach people like we've never reached before. And it's a way to ask people to take action in the way that they want to take action. Some people have different abilities. Some people have different schedules. Some people have different ways that they like to engage. And some people have different barriers to overcome. So digital is a way to allow a bigger crew of people to join in organizing. What's digital campaigning? So digital organizing is about building your muscle. It's about building your people power. It's about building your online presence or building your email list or building your crew of people that are ready to take action. Digital campaigning is about flexing that muscle. It's about putting people pressure, using your muscle, which is your people power, to put pressure on a bad actor or a movable target, campaign target. So it's taking our resources, taking our strength and changing it into action. So I have an example here of a digital campaign. I'm going to go through this really quickly, but if you have any questions on it, you can actually just research this or pull it up on Google. But basically, Breitbart is an alt-right, basically media outlet. They're awful people. And this one platform, Sleeping Giants, wanted to ask the people that host ads on Breitbart's website to stop advocating and sponsoring this awful white supremacist media channel. And so basically what some of us did was zero in on one entity that was helping Breitbart have a platform by selling their stuff. And they created a petition around this and sent it to a bunch of their supporters, got a lot of petition signatures. built a base of people that wanted to take action on it, and then proceeded to ask them to do different things on it. So they signed the petition, and then they sent an email to Shopify and asked them to stop funding Breitbart. And because of all the energy and attention that the petition and all the actions towards Spotify, because of all the action that like people like you and me did to show Spotify like that they were in the wrong, it got a bunch of media attention. And then with that, organizers took to offline and did a petition delivery to show this. And then they also asked supporters to call Shopify too. So essentially this campaign put pressure on Shopify with a petition, with an emails to them, with calls to them, and then an offline petition delivery. And all of that put a ton of pressure on Shopify, and Shopify eventually stopped giving Breitbart a platform. So that's one example of digital campaigning. And then what's relevant to this call is a digital campaign that we have at Greenpeace going on right now in the US. So the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs are basically have land in northern British Columbia. And they've had a long-standing blockade there for the past 9 years. They're blocking a pipeline from going through their land from Alberta out to the coast of BC. And so they've been holding their ground for a really long time for this pipeline not to go through. And right now in the pipeline campaign, the construction is starting. But it's contingent on a few entities that are funding the pipeline right now. And so KKR, which is a sort of shady investment firm in the US, has promised to invest millions of dollars into this pipeline. And so our digital campaign is to tell KKR to respect Indigenous rights and to stop any funding or any promise of funding to the Coastal GasLink pipeline. So right now where we're at with the campaign is that we're asking people to sign the petition. And right now we have about 100,000 signatures, which is amazing. And then we are asking people to send an email to KKR. We found some of KKR's office emails, some specific people, and then also we have some general emails. And so we have a tool that basically populates a letter, and it sends the letter to the KKR email address that we have in the back end. And also we're asking people to call KKR. We found a number for KKR, and we're asking people to call them and say, like, stop funding Coastal GasLink pipeline and respect Indigenous rights. And then lastly, we're asking people to tweet at KKR as well. So here's KKR's hashtag, and here's some example tweets that we have from a day of action that we had a few weeks ago. So this is an example of a digital campaign right now that Greenpeace is running. I don't know if people want to just read over these tweets really quick. And so for today, I'm going to be walking through some of the fundamentals around digital organizing campaigning strategy, but we also want you to take action on KKR today, be part of our digital campaign so you can see how you can participate and sort of the flow in our communications and use that for when you're creating your own at home. Great, and if there's any questions, I can't see the chat. But if there's any questions, maybe one of my co-hosts can read them so far. If there's not, then I can move on.
Hi, Vanessa. We have Naomi asking if you could explain a little bit more on KKR, who they are. Thanks.
Oh, yeah. KKR is an investment firm out of New York City. They basically are a financer of big projects. So they take money from different stock market investments and they invest that in other things that they think are going to turn a profit. They're shady. They've had a bad reputation. So the last thing that they did was they bought all the Toys R Us franchise, and they basically drove them to bankruptcy so they could sell their parts off to different entities. And within that, they just completely forgot about all the workers. So they didn't provide severance for any of the workers, didn't provide any heads up, anything for them. And the United for Courage campaign actually sued KKR and won a big monetary victory for workers and worker compensation, essentially severance. Because KKR spotted Toys R Us and basically said, this is something that we can take over and sell for parts and for our own profit and benefit. And essentially that's what they do. They're a middleman investment firm that invests in shady projects for their own profit.
Another question I see is from Drew, and it's after the webinar, could you email us a list of activities on what we can do on the KKR campaign? And we will be all taking collective action, like Vanessa said, today on this call. And then we also will be emailing and texting out all the links that we've mentioned tonight. So if you can't access the links or aren't able to take action right now, do not worry. We will send you everything that we've mentioned in here, including the slides and a recording of this call, so you can take action tomorrow as well.
Awesome. So I'm going to move on because I know that there's a lot to cover and we're a little bit pressed for time. So I walk through some definitions and sort of the overview of why we're doing what we're doing online. Now I want to walk through strategy. So strategy is important because we want to like build the car that we're driving before we drive it. So we know where we are going. We know what world we want to create and how to get there. We can sort of like throw out different targets, like tweet at KKR and email KKR over months and months. But if it doesn't come in like an arc, or if it doesn't come with a bundle of asks that go towards a certain direction, then it sort of doesn't have any strategy to make a real impact. So the first step in thinking about digital organizing and campaigning strategy is creating your supporter journey. So first thing, a supporter to Greenpeace are people like you, volunteers, activists, donors, people on our social media feeds. A supporter to you could mean your friends, your family, your community. It depends on how you define it and who your audience is, who you're asking to take action and organize with you. So that's supporter. And the supporter journey is basically a different series of asks that grow in escalation on a target to influence or move a target. So if you want to take a second and read this slide, it's a little bit of the definition. I'll give you 30 seconds. So the sort of analogy that I use when I'm describing a supporter journey is I ask people to think about websites. When people design websites with a strategy. They design them so you click on one thing and it intentionally brings you to another thing, and it intentionally brings you to another thing, and it intentionally brings you to another thing. Their strategy in how people lay out their website, and then where you go as you navigate around. This is sort of similar to that, where we're asking people to take one action, and then it brings them to another one, and asks people to take another one, and then another one, and then another one. And all of those asks together form a strategy on how to move or change a big target, try to change the world. So as I move forward, I'm gonna like repeat some things a couple times in different ways, just because there's a different ways of talking about this. So that's supporter journey. So if we're breaking down a supporter journey, this is one example. This is a supporter journey that we're using around the digital KKR campaign. So first, we're asking people to sign a petition. And a petition is a relatively easy thing to do, right? We've all signed them. You sort of put in your name, your email address, and you push send, and it sends off. And that's usually what we start with, because it's a really easy action for people to take. It signals that people are interested in the issue that you're presenting, and then it gives them a low barrier to sort of join in. And we've seen just through data and through different things that starting with a petition in your supporter journey will add to bringing people along, more people along in your supporter journey. So let's say I send everybody the petition via an email on Monday. And then Thursday, I plan to send them an email that asks them to email or message a KKR executive. And then maybe 5 days later, I ask people to call KKR. And then maybe a week later after that, I ask people to tweet at KKR. So this is an example of a supporter journey. And so, as you can see, each of these asks take a little bit more effort or investment for folks as they're building towards the end of it. So in supporter journeys, what you'll see is a bunch of people will join your petition, and then as you go, the amount of people will lessen. That's not necessarily a bad thing. What it shows you is the people that do the actions all the way to the end, it shows you that those people are super interested in this issue and are super interested and excited about organizing with you. And these are the people that you want to create relationships with, that you want to organize, while this whole arc is putting impact on KKR or the target that you choose. If there's any questions on this, you can drop them in the chat. And co-hosts, feel free to just interrupt me.
Yes, one question just came in, Vanessa. Is there any indication that KKR or other entities will respond to petitions, calls, or anything unless it hurts their bottom line?
That's a great question. So in digital campaigns, sometimes you can tell right away that you're having an impact on a target, and sometimes you can't. Sometimes in some digital campaigns and campaigns that I've run, we threw everything we had at a target for 4 years and didn't hear anything. And then in the 5th year, they turned around. They finally were like, we've had enough. You've been bothering us for 4 years. And in that 4 years, we had no idea that we were bothering them. But here's the thing. Petitions, big petitions with big petition numbers on them are good media stories. And you can get into local media if you have a big petition number, especially if you're a grassroots crew with a local issue. It's really easy to get into media if you're saying, I have 20,000 petition signatures on this issue with this company that's acting poorly in my town or city. And that puts pressure on them in that way. And then if you look at these other things, if I was a KKR executive, I wouldn't want my email to get blown up by a bunch of emails from somebody like me. I know that bothers them. We know that calls to them will jam up their lines for the day and bother them for the day. And tweets about them will show up on Twitter. So we know that these are sort of tried and true tactics that we know will bother a target. And whether we know it's bothering them or not, sometimes we're unsure. But that doesn't mean that we should stop. And I think we can follow up with this, but there's many different ways to sort of assess that. I hope that answers your question.
I see one more kind of group of questions, which is there a model letter folks can use or a sample of emails that they should be sending to folks? Do we have that anywhere that they can use?
Yeah, we'll send the different action pages and emails for this KKR advocacy, and that's sort of like, I would say that you could use those as a template. Different things that you can change in your template are like tone. If you're talking to a target that isn't so evil like KKR, and you know that they're really movable and they just need a tiny little push, then your letter to them or your calls to them are gonna be written and sound a lot different than letters to people like KKR. Like, you have a bad history, you are a bad actor, this is another example of this, et cetera, versus if I wanna move Nancy Pelosi, I would say, hey, Nancy, what you have given us this and this and this, we know that you're a champion of the people, how about this? So that's sort of like, there isn't one set template because it depends on really what you're asking in your tone, but what we'll send you is like a good place to start. So there's one more thing that I wanted to point out on this slide, and keep the questions coming. But as you see these little arrows on the bottom that talk about what I call mediums or channels. So as I'm sure everybody is aware, we live on the internet. There is no offline and online anymore. We're both simultaneously in the online world and in the offline world at the same time. I'm looking at my phone while I'm in the offline world. And so we want to make sure that our message is reaching people on a bunch of different channels, because some people live in their email box, but then some other people are only on Instagram when they're online, or only on Twitter. Or maybe somebody actually just likes phone calls or is only on their text. So when you're creating your supporter journey, you want to think about how you're delivering that ask. Maybe a call ask works better as a text to somebody, because then people will see the text on their phone and then click the button and they're on their phone already. Maybe the tweet at KKR is an ask that you can ask over Twitter, or maybe not. Maybe you want to switch it up and test what works better. But we call this a multi-channel supporter journey because we want to give people a rounded experience. Like I said before, some people have different abilities, different resources, different times that they're on the internet. When you have a multi-channel approach, it helps more people get involved and into your supporter journey to put impact on your target.
And Vanessa, just to pop in real quick, I think you're going to answer this with the next part. Francine just asked, I have tried to get my friends and family to do this stuff, but I can't seem to like excite them or motivate them, or, you know, you post it and you get one like, and it's disheartening. So if we're just people out there in this world with the lists that we already have with our social media networks, like what do we do? And I think that's your next part, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, so I totally feel your pain. I've had to build up lots of grassroots stuff from the ground up. And so there's two ways to think about this. One is what I'm going to say right now, and then the second is the part that we're going to talk about next, is the segue that we're going to go into. But the first thing is, like, as you're as you're doing this multi-channel, all these multi-channel asks, you're like building them as you go. So you're building your email list, you're building your social media following as you go with these asks. If you're finding that, this is sort of like a different tangent, but if you're finding that you're not getting a lot of engagement with your friends and family, then you may have to do some like internet sleuthing to figure out like, who are your people? Who do you think will be interested? Are there Facebook groups already out there? Are there Facebook groups on climate change? Are there groups in your town or city that you could tap into? Maybe there's a local Greenpeace chapter or a Sierra Club chapter. And maybe those are, or maybe there's advocacy groups that are already doing stuff around climate in your town. Tapping into those and working with those people. And one of the things that I wanted to say at the beginning is that when we're organizing stuff like this, you don't ever really want to organize stuff alone, because your network is smaller than if you have 3 people together and combining their networks and combining their tools. So I would say, just to answer your question on this first part, is I would like try and sync up with other organizers like you in where you are. And that could be in different Facebook groups online, or that could be just like in person, and not really in person right now because we have to be in social isolation, but figuring out and talking with those people and being like, I see this campaign, like how can we like push it out to a larger audience? And that's kind of like, that's all I got for you on sort of that. But then the second part is about messaging. And so thanks for your question, because it goes into this part really smoothly. So when we're creating campaigns and supporter journeys, we want to think about, how are people seeing our journey that we're presenting to them? How are supporters seeing your campaign? So sometimes you have to think through your supporters' eyes. So for example, if you're sending it out to your friends and family and people aren't taking action, maybe it's like, who is on your list and what do they care about? And is there a way for you to message your ask that piques their attention? Because it's more personal to them as opposed to the issue being personal to you. And that brings us into storytelling. And why it's important. So we can create supporter journeys all day long, but if we're not creating a cohesive message that has urgency, that gives people hope and inspiration, that people find deep, meaningful, and impactful, we're gonna have a little bit of trouble. And so I wanna break down different ways on how to create your messaging. So asking people to take action. There's 3 components to this. And usually I create this like in a Google document. I just sort of like map out my supporter journey and then I move on to this part. And I think about a moment of influence or the crisis-opportunity, my theory of change, and then my ask. And I write, I'm gonna explain all those, but I write all those down, I fill it all out in a Google document, and then I use it for all the asks and content that I'm developing. So I'm gonna talk through that right now. So a moment of influence, crisis-opportunity. Like I said before, it's using an array of online channels, digital tools, and storytelling to inspire people to turn the resources that they have, their voice or their vote, into the power they need to make the change that they want. So that's like an out of the box definition. And really all that means is you want to create a couple sentences for folks that describe the problem or the crisis, and then highlight the importance of it right now in this moment for people to take action and the urgency behind it. So here's an example. Here's an example of a crisis-opportunity or a moment of influence. So Trump has just approved a disastrous DAPL pipeline. So the opportunity in this or to how to solve the problem is the project is financially precarious, and public pressure could force DAPL's investors to pull out, which is the solution in stopping DAPL. And then we have to add urgency in that. So if we get them to pull out in the next 3 months, or in the next 2 months, or the next week, then we can have a huge impact. So in this, we talk about the problem, the solution, and why it's important to take action right now, what the urgency is. So when you're shaping your asks, it's important to have these components because they give people a reason why they need to be present in this exact moment, at this exact right now. There's lots of asks, there's lots of noise around that people are faced with all the time, and how do you get yours to stand out? And people just want to have an impact. So this is a way of constructing that. So again, you want to express to your reader that their action is necessary and important, and what they can do to solve the crisis. And it's got to be plausible. So if this opportunity said, opportunity, Trump needs to know that this is violates Indigenous rights and hurts the climate, and therefore my ask is to ask Trump to stop it. That's not a viable ask. That's not plausible because he's not going to change. But if we pressure different things around the different DAPL pipeline, then we can get it to change. So I want to just take a second and go back to this first slide. So we have our supporter journey. We have our asks mapped out in order of like escalation or increasing sort of difficulty or investment. And then as we're creating our story, we want to create it with our crisis-tunity in mind and our theory of change in our ask. And so when we're talking about these things, we want to design them in a way that presents the crisis or the problem to people, and then the solution, and then the urgency of it. And then a theory of change just means summing it up all in one. And I like to use my theory of change at the top of my emails. It's sort of like the first communication in my text. And what it really is like, if we do this, then this will happen because of this. That's sort of what and I don't want to get too much in the weeds around theories of change because it's a lot of jargon. But the way that I would define this one is if we put enough pressure on DAPL's investors to do the right thing, they can pull out of the pipeline because they're concerned about brand damage with their shareholders and the public. So, the KKR campaign, the theory of change for the KKR campaign is if we put enough pressure on the Coastal GasLinks investors and shame them, then we can get them to pull their funds out of the pipeline because they've already lost for a lawsuit before and they don't want to go through that again. Just as an example of the KKR. Cool. So this is a sort of, in this session, I would say that this is sort of the most difficult concept to grasp in creating your digital campaigns. Do folks have any questions around this, or do folks need any clarity, or maybe you have an example that you want to share with us?
I don't think we're seeing too many new questions right now. We are getting close to 9:30, just as a time check.
Okay, great. And so going from here, there's lots of resources online that talk about all the things that I've talked about so far. And so I would say, like, if this is an introduction for you, I'd say do some more research and read up on them again. But here are the basic terms and strategy framings for digging into digital organizing and campaigning. And again, it's important to ground in like what's fundamental here. So again, lots of jargon, lots of different strategy and tactic conversations. But what's fundamental about organizing online is it's just organizing more people to build your people power, to put more pressure, and to move a target, just like you do in offline organizing. Oops, sorry, my phone is loud. Cool. And then the last thing I want to say, I'm going to go quickly through these because I know that we don't have a lot of time. But again, if you're having trouble getting your campaign off the ground, connect with other people, see what other resources are out there in your community. Maybe somebody's a great writer. Maybe somebody's a great artist. Maybe you can't reach the people on your social feeds because their interest would be more piqued with art or a video. As opposed to just a post. And so the next quick thing that we're going to talk about is what's content. So when we're talking about strategy, we talked about strategy, and we talked about some tactics, emailing the target, calling the target, tweeting at the target. And now we want to talk about content. How are we packaging all of your different tactics? And all content is like, how are you delivering your message? So that can be through graphics, through a blog, through a tweet, through a video. There's Adrian. Hey, Adrian. Adrian made this amazing video about securing a climate president, and it got 8,000 views as an Instagram live. So there's definitely different and creative ways to create content to share your message, depending on who your audience is. Great. So I'm going to pass it off to Liz now. Yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay. If you wouldn't, perfect. So we are about to now take some action together. So Vanessa walked us through how we can think about using digital organizing and digital campaigning to put pressure on a target to make a difference. So like I said, there's about 100 folks on this call right now. And we were thinking that it could be really cool in this moment if every single one of us crafted a post. And depending on the platform you use, I personally only have Twitter, because I don't trust Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook. So depending on the platform that you use, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, we would love for you to craft a tweet or a post and do it to put pressure on KKR. So if you are curious about how to do that, you want to think about what's an image that you can use, what's a quote that you can use, or what's something that you want to say to KKR to stop to stop funding the pipeline in Canada, and then 2, to respect Indigenous rights that are there. So if you are nervous about doing that, we want to use the chat box as a way to put in your sample post, and we'd love to give feedback on that. And then after you get some feedback, you can post it online, and you can follow each other through different hashtags. Vanessa, do we actually have a hashtag that we're using for this for folks able to check each other online?
Yes, it's shutdown KKR.
Awesome. Can someone, yes, perfect. Adrian just put that into the chat. So if you would like to see other folks do this at the same time, the really cool thing is that you can follow then that hashtag and see what's happening online for different folks too. And then if you are super savvy, you can give each other feedback in the chat box on posts. If you're like, you can add an emoji to that, or you can add a location to that, or you can add a picture, and then you can look at each other's posts online through the hashtags. So want to take a second and do this all together right now. Just say it one more time. You're going to craft a post on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can also do all 3 and put pressure on KKR. You're going to put it into the chat box for us to see so you get some feedback, post it online, and you can follow that hashtag to see how other folks are doing it together. And Vanessa, as folks are doing this right now, do you have if you were thinking about this, can you walk through your process about what you would personally tweet to KKR right now as like an example for folks to look at? Oh, perfect. It's on the screen right now.
Yeah. So these tweets are from a day of action that we had, day of online action that we had a couple of weeks ago, where we asked people to email KKR, call KKR, and tweet at KKR.
Great. And then a chat that I see coming in the chat box right now, do we have any sample graphics that you recommend using, or how do people think about photos for this?
Sorry, I'm trying to navigate this. Yes, we have, there's this one graphic here that was made in the coalition. So you can make something like this, or you can make something like that just has all text on it. Or maybe you want to make a video, a 1-minute video, and you shoot it horizontally that talks about the whole thing.
It's great. I see Drew, I see Francine, I see Judy have all done incredible sample language. Thanks for doing that. Yeah, Anne says, I don't use social media, so I'm not sure she wants to start. I know we have, did you want to talk about our email form? Was there something with that too?
Yeah, if maybe Adrian or Liz, if you want to drop the link to the email to target. And if you don't use social media, I would say you can take this time to potentially craft a text that you can text to some folks on your phone that asks them to take action at the link that we're going to post in the chat right now. So something like, hey, I'm working on this campaign. Indigenous rights are being threatened in northern BC, but there's a way that we can push the investors to pull out of the pipeline and stop it indefinitely. And the first thing that you could do is send a letter to KKR telling them how bad of an idea it is for them to invest in the Coastal GasLink pipeline. And then you give them that link and they can go to it and get more information and then take action at the same time.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking at the time, and like Liz said earlier, I'm going to be closing this out. And I just want to say, you know, some folks are really great at taking action right away, and some folks need some more time to think about it, think about what they're going to say. So if you weren't able to take action and put out a tweet or an Instagram or sign a letter in the call tonight, that's completely okay. Again, we'll be sending out all the resources that I've mentioned earlier in a text and an email tomorrow. So if you are feeling impassioned and are ready to take action, but maybe right now is not the space, we'll send out all of these resources. I'm loving seeing all of the messages and tweets that folks are going to be sending out in the chat though. It's so great to see that live. And I'd also love folks to also just put in how that felt. If you're, you know, how you're feeling about this, you know, what that felt like, just take action right away. We unfortunately don't have time to dive too deep into it, but we definitely love to hear from you about what this experience was like for you and how'd you feel doing it, what'd you learn, and what feedback do you have for us, because we always want to make sure we're giving you the things you need. So again, we'll follow up with all the ways you can take action tomorrow, but please let us know how that felt if you were able to take action tonight. And we can talk about next. What's coming up next. So if this is your first Take Action Tuesday, thank you so much for joining. These are just the beginning of calls we'll be having every single Tuesday for the foreseeable future, while we need to continue taking our action and continue our activism while we're at home. So these are going to be spaces that you can count on every week to join us and take action. Our next one is going to be next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. The next few Take Action Tuesdays are going to be around how to make a mask and how to put a personal message on it, how to write a letter to the editor, how to tell your story, and also around the upcoming Earth Day Live, which come out of the Youth Climate Strikes. So we'll be sending out a link for how to join those. We'll be chatting the calendar link into the chat. So right before we wrap up this call, we want to make sure that we're sending out a poll. If you have ever been on a Greenpeace call, you know we love ourselves a poll. We always have them throughout the call. And this is just to make sure that we're building these calls around what you are looking for. So don't be shy. If this wasn't what you're looking for, that's really good feedback for us so that we can build and kind of grow to make sure that these calls are fitting what you're looking for. So the 4 we have is, it was amazing, it was solid, I was looking for something else, and other, I'm putting it into the chat. So I'll have that real quick. And again, we'll be sending out an email and a text tomorrow with next steps, and you can also give us direct feedback through those as well. I'm gonna give folks a few more seconds to give their feedback. And please, if you just have any, we'd love to hear it. I also tend to have personal numbers in my head of what percentage I'd like to see of the folks in this call. Okay, I'm gonna be ending the poll now. And it's great to see that an overwhelming percentage of you had a good experience on this call. That's always really great to hear. And we are also always looking for feedback on our calls. So we're gonna go to the next one. Thank you all so much for joining this call. I know how much a lot of us have in our lives, in our hearts and our minds right now. So seeing all of you join, over 100 of you joining our call tonight was really great to see. We're really grateful for all of you. Again, be on a lookout for how to jump on. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.